All right, so the next assignment is we're going to show you how to make a lidded container. Now, granted, there's some criteria and such, and we just went over, but basically the main things are it needs to have 4 overall components. You'll have the lid, the base, some kind of a pin that would connect the two. And we're going to also introduce how to import models you find online, different STLs from different websites, and import those. So your container needs to contain a thing. Now, that can also be a real world object. You want to make it like, I don't know, an X-Acto or pen box or something cool. Obviously, from there, you could either find a model of an X-Acto knife or something like this. You could probably just make a pretty simple model. Quick thing, if you are making your own model, I'm not expecting you to make a precision model of like an X-Acto knife or whatever have you. A close enough representation is perfectly fine. Stuff like that gets more involved in. We'll talk about how to do stuff like that later. But that's perfectly fine if you want to kind of make a quick facsimile. Totally up to you. Other things, it needs to actually be mobile. So I'm going to be showing you how to create a thing, your contain your model with using the joint tool. So it actually will open and close within Fusion. It needs to have some features into it, like a thumb latch of some sort. So that would just be like, literally just a little boop, little thumbnail, something like that, stick to poke it up. And then some sort of also design to it. So like if you want to make like poke holes in the top, give it text, I don't know, pencil box, or this is mine, keep your hands off, whatever. Totally up to you. However that goes about. Those are the main criteria. There's, of course, a couple other little details, but that's really about it. Main thing here, let me hop over to the assignment page, and this is just the rundown. Like I said, the size, shape can be anything. It doesn't have to be a box. I will warn you if you're trying to make like a sphere, like a Pokeball, hinges for that get a little more awkward, but it's doable. I don't care if it's an amorphous blob. Definitely a little more awkward and trying to make it with a hinge like we're going to be modeling, but you do you. Again, different features, that sort of thing. Appearances we will be applying, which is just making it within Fusion, making it look like a thing. Like I want this part make like it looks like it's made out of rich mahogany, the other out of sumptuous gold. I don't know, whatever. And we've been working on this. The other thing is it needs to contain a thing. So you can either model a quick reference or you can use any number of file sharing websites to download a file. So how to do that? There's a few here at the bottom. Some of the major ones, Printables, Thingiverse, and My Mini Factory. These are all free, although My Mini Factory does have payable ones. There are many, many, many other websites, but a lot of the models are for purchase, which is cool if you want, but I'm not asking you to spend money on anything. So other examples, Printables, it's linked through Prusa. It's whatever model is up, whatever close, you stupid pop-up.
Oh, these pop-up ads.
It's an unskippable pop-up. There we are. Dastardly pop-ups. It's a flexible hot dog. You never know what you're going to find. And then this is the Mini Factory. Basically, a lot of the same. So check out the websites. Try not to get totally lost on them. They're fun, but they are what they are. But I want to find something that's fun to model, or sorry, fun to bring in. So I already looked up a Frog the Frog. It's adorable and fun and entertains me. So what you do, you can of course go to download, or any of these, you can find just the file itself and go to download the file itself. Same thing on Thingiverse. If you want to make tiny little crates, same deal, go down to the files. There's going to be a huge amount of things, but that's simply because you can download different iterations of them and just use the download thing, not in Cura, because we're not trying to print those. We're trying to get the actual STL file. Same thing goes for anything on like printables. You want to make, I don't know, handy hand. There we go. A lot of these are going to be like tabletop models and stuff like that, but same deal, exact same option. So go there, download. It's now on your computer somewhere. Great. So let's hop over to Fusion and I'll show you a couple of quick examples of stuff that I've done. So simple ones would just be like some sort of a container. It has a top and a bottom, and it'll have some kind of a hole and a hinge model feature. needs to have some kind of like a little latch thumb feature, whatever you feel like making, some sort of impression, be it extrusion, be it emboss, whatever. But what I'm actually going to show you how to do is it can actually open and close, and then it reverts back. Now some of these examples are older models, so they do have imported hardware. I'm not going to bother with that. This is actually with like actual screws and nuts, but I'm not going to worry about that. There are rounded things. You could make the same thing, but this is essentially just a different shape with the same feature. Like I said, something that's actually round, like a sphere, definitely gets a little awkward, but I don't know, weird gourd shape. Cool, go for it. But the example I'm going to be using is the more complete one, but it does in fact have more features that we're not going to be dealing with tonight, but there are there. This model for that was intended more of also for advanced users and anything has it's the exact same model. Lid opens, and this my imported one was an adorable missile toad for the time of year that requires missiles and toads.
Oh, I'm very familiar with that time.
But this one also actually has literal latches built onto it to where it could actually clasp. So these can move independently as well. Just gets kind of a little awkward actually getting it to move. But those are totally a thing we could do, but it still has the same features. So let's start a new model and go from there. So first things first, as always, save. Example in class Frug box. If I could spell. Great. Now, you can start with whatever. If you are intending to make a model or make a model so it actually fits inside, something like that, I would recommend actually bringing that model in. So let's show you how to do exactly that. In the upper right hand, under where we've been using like canvas insert, stuff like that, there is insert, excuse me. Unfortunately, it's at insert mesh. You are not directly bringing in an STL in a standard fashion like it would look like any of the models we've used, but that's how Fusion functions in this case. So we're going to use that. Insert mesh, find in your computer whatever it is that you have now downloaded, in this case, my little Frug friend, and it just drops it in. Now, be cautious on what you find or what you import if you find a model you want to bring in. It can very quickly be very complex and add a whole lot of information to a file that will suddenly bog your computer down. So I recommend simple things. But you can, of course, resize and everything like that. There's my adorable friend. Hello there, friend. And you have some options here if you want to center it, anything like that. Cool, great. Okay, there we are. And this will automatically, in this case, starts the whole thing as that model. Example, frog class. It'll bring it in as a frog. Now, first things first, like you said, when I have multiple components, in this case, I want to go ahead and make a new component for, oops, hit the thingy, Frug. All right. If I just drag and drop that in, now that at least keeps my frog separate. Why is it? Okie dokie. Don't know why it's not altering the color, but okay, there we go. Imported model. So that's really it. It's pretty straightforward. If you are unsure how big it's actually going to be, you can use the measure tool, the little ruler measure tool, and just find a couple of points. So on here, I'm just going to select somewhere on the end, somewhere on the end. How big is this? All right, that's 222 millimeters across. That's kind of giant. So from there, you can certainly scale that down. Easy thing to do. Open up the project, frog, right click. Oops, I'm still using the scale thing. Right click and then bring up the scale tool. And if you're not finding it there, that's all right, because it looks like it's not. Just bring up the regular scale, all set. Now in this case, technically scale mesh, but let's see here, there. And it's a scale factor. So if it's 220 or 222, make it smaller. I don't know, a quarter of that. So 0.25, much more reasonable size. Double check kind of sort of a measurement. All right, 33 millimeters. That seems far more reasonable. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that'll work. Great. And it's sitting on the plane. Super duper. We can always move it around. Save that. Sure. Whatever. Okay. So one quick thing is when it scaled, it did move it out of center, meaning if I go to either the top view, you can see where my origin point is. While that's not necessarily a problem, I will recommend building things around the origin point. So all you got to do, select that, bring up the move tool, or just press M, Montana, move, and then just drag it over. That's all right. And it doesn't have to be exact. It's okay. Doesn't really matter. I just prefer to build things off of the origin point, the center of my virtual workspace. It makes things easier to build from. So like if I'm using a center point rectangle, it's on the center and it's all set. So there we go. Okay. Moving around. Oh, it's still very high up, way off. So same problem. Move again. Not really a big deal. That's pretty close to the center. All right, cool. That works well enough for me. It's definitely turned around. So if you if it really bothers you, you can move it. So one quick thing, if you do want to revolve it, turn it around or anything like that, and you're having trouble like selecting right here. So right now, if I move this, it's going to throw it all out of whack. Easy thing to do is if it lets you, you can select right off the center, but you just moving and moving.
It looks like it looks like a Kirby, but like bulging on it.
That too. Yeah, it's mildly, it's both adorable and terrifying. Easy way to move where you are moving from. On this move box here that I just pressed with or brought up by pressing the M key on your keyboard, go to set pivot. That little checkbox turns green, and then just move it somewhere more of in the center. It's going to keep trying to snap right in the middle, meaning like it keeps finding the origin point, but you can kind of select something like there. And then when you do, you have to uncheck the move. Now I can move it more from the center. So there you go if you need to be a little more exacting with it. Okay, that's all. Simple thing to do. Let's save there. Group moved. All right. Did a bunch of move stuff, blah, 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 blah. Now I want to start building stuff. I want to build just my basic container. Now, in this case, I'm going to show you how to just basically build like a box. All right. So you can start either by creating components first or not. It doesn't really matter. In this case, I'm not going to bother because I intentionally actually want to start these sketches outside of either component and drag and drop. And I'll show you why in a minute. But basically, it's because I want both the lid and the base of the container to share those same sketches. That'll make a lot more sense when I do so. All right. So first off, the old start a sketch. Excuse me, Frug, you're right in the way. I want to work on the XY axis. So like I'm working on flat on the table. There we go. Doesn't matter if I'm working from the top or the bottom, but just for consistency's sake, I'll go from the top. And easy thing. Yeah, let's start center point rectangle. Right in the center, make it big enough where the little guy fits. And if you want to pretend that this is going to be the outside edge or the inside edge, doesn't really matter. So just so long as it would like technically actually fit. So, all right, so that's 40 by 32. If you just really needed that to be like a whole number or an odd number, okay, press tab, goes over to the other measurement. Let's make that 35. Hooray. Hit enter. Technically, that could be it. But let's make a little bit of feature on this. So I could say like, I want this to be a little more rounded. Okay, let's put some offset, or so not offset. Let's use a fillet tool. So if I select one, I start. Okay, that's way too big. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Let's say 3. Sure. But if you do not hit enter, you can make all these match. So I have not hit enter. What I can do now is work my way around. I select one line and the other. It's going to give you an error because it's changing constraints. That's okay. And just keep doing that, moving it around. So now all of them are that way, but also now all of them are linked. See this arrow here? Grab it and drag. Now all of them change at the same time. Otherwise, I have to go through and do this individually. So just a neat feature, just a neat thing you can do. You do not have to round it out here, nor technically round it out at all, but it definitely makes for a nicer thingy. Hit OK. From here, I can either go ahead and make like the outer edge. if I'm thinking this, I'm going to build this kind of like we did for the Revolve project, to where this is going to be one of the sides of the profile, and then I could use offset here and say, I don't know, let's give it like negative 2 millimeter walls. Okay, I moved it out 2 millimeters. Cool, that can work. Hit okay. So I could say like that. If I extrude this out, I'm just going to make like a little simple box, and that's really it for the part. I'm just making a box that I'm going to extrude up. Very, very simple. Hit okay. Home button. Now, before I do anything, I do want to label the sketch. It helps me keep track of things. Sketch, just box base. That makes sense. Okay, cool. So now we'll go to extrude. Now, if I want, I can just extrude this as the wall. So I just selected that inner and outer profile and just drag it upwards. And whatever makes sense, if you want to completely hide your little buddy or make it kind of half and half, something like that, just eyeball sticking out. Cool. Now, this is not making a solid thing yet. That's all right. Let's hit OK. Now I need to make a base for this. Another extrude. Now this time, I want those sketches and unhide the sketch this time. So let's select that wall, but also that inner part. See, I've got both of them now. Now if I just drag downwards, say like, I don't know, -2, there we go. My operation at the bottom here automatically changes to join. Boom. Very, very simple way to make the bottom of a container. It is all linked as one body. Let's relabel that body. Box bottom, easy. All right. Now I'm going to make another body. Let's make the top. So usually I would have kind of split the thing right in the center, but this works just fine too. To make the top, I need that sketch as well. Or I can kind of borrow stuff from above. So let's do another extrusion. And I can use that sketch from below, but this time I want to show you kind of a little bit different way to how to work to make it a hollow object. All right. I've got that whole sketch, both the inner sketch or the inner section and that outer edge, but I want to extrude that up to make a lid. But if I do that for right there, it's starting right in the center. It's going to cut away, blah, blah, blah. I don't want that. Go back to 0. So for one thing, I'm going to change where it starts. Right now, the default is profile plane. It's starting where it's drawn. That's all. Next, I want to change it to object, and I can just select that upper lip. Now, when I start extruding upward, it's going to make the whole thing up top. Now, it's hard to see right now, so let me because it's wanting me to join. I don't want that with a new body. There we are. You can see where it's starting from now. And just so long as it actually, like, hides the little frog buddy, which is at about 8. So I'll add a little bit more, let's say 10. Okay, cool. That makes it body 2. Let's just say box lid. Great. Let me hide the bottom, and this will make a little more sense. Right now, oh no, it's very, very trapped inside of a solid block. The two different ways you could do this is you can extrude the walls as hollow, that sort of thing. That's fine. Another way is this tool up here called the shell tool. What this does is exactly what it is. It's like the offset tool, but like in sketching, but it works 3-dimensionally. So it takes like a solid object and hollows it out up to the distance of the walls. So if I select that, and the part that you select, the face you select, is what will be an opening. So if I come inside, select that bottom face, if I start making it, oh, it was already selected. There we go. And you establish how thick the wall is. Before, the other one was 2 millimeters, let's say 2. Boop. Makes it instantly hollow. It's a really convenient way to work and to make a box, especially if you're making something that isn't necessarily square. So like this round container one. Oops, I always do that. A lot easier to use the shell tool than to try to make sure that this is hollow. So if you're making something that's not square, not rectangular, I know, same thing, shell tool works really nicely. All right, cool. So I've got my box, I've got my bottom. Now this needs to be different components. Let's make a couple of components. First one, oops, if I can spell, lid. Now I want to deselect this activate checkbox at the bottom here, just because otherwise I always do it. I accidentally make a nested component. I don't want to do that. Deselect that, and all that does is makes my new component out here, just says lid, but the whole project is still active. And I'll show you the difference. Because now when I go to create new component, if I hadn't unchecked that box, it would then create that component, the lid, within the following component, meaning it'll just be nested. And while that's not necessarily a big problem, it makes things really awkward, and especially since we're using the joint tool, it kind of messes that all up. So we'll just say base, and I'll show you what happens, what I mean by if you leave that checkbox checked, hit OK, and it activates that component. So that's all. So really the only difference, it just is an easy way to not get lost in your project. It's not that big a deal to drag and drop things back out, but there you go. All right, so speaking of drag and drop, I need these box parts into their own components. So let me grab the bottom, bring it into base. I should have labeled that the same. I'll change that real quick. There, so at least they all match. And box lid goes into lid. There we go. Okay, so now they're actually in their places. Again, I have it in auto color mode, so it's just showing it a little more clearly. Let me save. Components added. All right, cool. So that's it. That you've made your container. Now I can of course make features and stuff like that later, but for right now, just gonna do this. All right, so now in order to make this whole thing move and open, I need to make a hinge. Now you can make this as complex or as simple as you please. These is just a simple 3-lobe hinge. What I mean is these little like lobes kind of look like earlobes. That's it. Just a simple lid, simple parts. It's just those little bits. So it's basically a circle with a triangle drawn on it. That's really it. Now, think of like your door hinge or something. There's a whole bunch of little circles. Yeah, you can make it as complex as you please. It doesn't really matter. But in this case, for this project, I'm just going to make it real simple so that way we can just kind of move on. All right. So how do you do this? Well, basically, just decide where you want it to open from. And we'll keep it front. So there we go. So I'm going to start a new sketch, as is always the fun. But a couple of quick things. Make sure you have the whole project active. Don't forget that you're not working in like the bottom or the top or yada yada. Activate the whole project, which is mouse up, click the little circle. Okay, I'm gonna create a sketch. Now I need to create a sketch where the first one was on the XY, like I'm drawing on a table. I need it perpendicular to that. I want it on the XZ, or in this case, actually YZ, because looking at it, I can see the little green line. If you're having trouble selecting it, hide something like the bottom or also my frog, and you can see what I mean. I'm trying to grab that. There we go. So it's perpendicular to my project. That's all. All right, me on to hide the bottom. There we are. Now, what I basically want to do is just draw a circle where the two meet. But sometimes you can get lost, stuff like that. It's easy to draw circles and stuff or it's easy to draw based off of that, but I want this to be a functional thing. So we talked a little bit about project last time. If I go down, create, project, or just press the P button.
I do both of those all the time.
Exactly. These are super helpful. So you have two selection filters, like by faces, which is just that, or you can select the whole body. Doesn't matter, whichever one. But hit OK. But now when I hide, say, like the bottom and top, now I'm left with that as an actual sketch built right on. So I don't get lost as easily. That's the main thing. Also, this is now an interactive part. So all I need really is a couple of circles. So I'm going to go to create this time, because instead of a center point circle, it's a little bit easier to start with a 2-point, because I can select right there where the top and bottom meet and just draw outward. How big? Don't make it too small. Don't make it too big. Basically, how big is your hinge? It depends on how big you want to make that pin. And give me a second and I'll explain. But basically, I'd recommend like make your pin about 3 to 5 millimeters. So I want to give it a little bit more size to that. That's okay. And if you want to work that way, that actually works pretty easily. So instead of like trying to estimate, I don't really know how big I want to make this. Don't. Let's start with a center point circle. Start there. And now let's say I want to make this whole thing. Yep. I want to give it like a 3mm pin. All right, great. And I know I need to make that a little bit larger so that I'm not just creating the hole, I'm creating the space around it. So I don't know, use the offset tool and let's make that, I don't know, 2mm bigger than that. Nice. All right. So now the problem is I need to make sure this meets over here. This is where the constraint tools come in. So what I can do is say like select tangent and let's select there and I want that circle. Bam. Snaps it over. Basically from here on, well, we're going to talk about tangents and we're going to talk about the joint tool. You have 2 mouse clicks. You're selecting one thing and then the other. Kind of keep this idea in mind. The first thing you select is where the thing will move to. The second thing you select is what will move. So what I did there is I selected this side of my sketch, which will end up being that side of the lid, that side of the box. The second thing I selected was that other circle. So bam, smacked it right over. Next thing is this part gets a little trickier. I need to make sure that's kind of right in the center. If you have trouble with this, I often draw just a line. So I'll draw like a line from the center and just straight out. Doesn't matter if it's bigger or not, but it needs to be straight out. And it helps to make this a construction line. This is just that reference line. And that's just like that. Yeah, just press X. That's it. No big deal. Okay. From that, now I can move this thing. So let's select all the things, or you can just go through individually, select, select, select. That's all. Press the move tool. And now I just need to drag that down and it should snap in place if it's a whole number. If not, you can move it by adding numbers, whatever, but try to get it smack in the middle. Hit OK. If that is difficult, and I'm not saying like if that's too difficult for you, I mean, if that just ends up being awkward and difficult, then just do it like I did the first time, which would have been, and I'll just throw this as a second sketch. Let me hide this real quick. Oops, it hit all my things. That's all right. Start a new sketch, same spot. We'll unhide the top and bottom. And I'll do the same. Project. This time I'll do bodies. That one and that one. And now if I hide it, right back to where I was. So if those steps, like the moving and all the stuff gets awkward, just start it from here. 2-point circle, right smack in the middle, draw it out. What was it? I made it 3mm and then I added 2 on all sides. That would make it 7, 8, whatever. If you want to make it more roundy, cool. There you go. Now the opposite way, I can make like a concentric circle right in the center. That would be like 3mm. Cool. There you go. You end up with the exact same thing. Just this might be a few less steps. That's all. Okay. So either way you get there. Now I need to make those little lobes. This is literally just a line. So get your line tool and select somewhere and somewhere. That little middle point arrow, popped up. Cool. Use that. Do it again. Repeat line, something like that. If I want to find the middle point, cool. You do not have to. It can be all the way up if you want. Cool. One quick thing, if you do want to make this actually like a little bit smoother transition, use the tangent tool again. Remember, the first thing is what will move. Second thing is what it moves against, what it's related to. So I'm going to select that line and then the circle, and it just adjusts a little bit. That's all. Same thing, line and then the circle. It just readjusts a little bit. That little circle and line tool or symbol, that's a constraint tool. That's it. Okay, that's all I need for my hinge. Finish sketch. All right, so I'll just say hinge sketch. Neat. Save. Hinge sketch. Okay. So I've got my sketch. It is outside of the 2 components, the lid and the bottom. It's in the shared area here. That is where I need it to be, because just like making the top and bottom, I don't want it inside. I want it actually outside of that. Because what we're going to do next automatically links it. We're going to make an extrusion. And you're going to pick top or bottom, doesn't really matter. But what you need to do is activate the top or the bottom first. So cancel that. We'll activate the bottom. All right. The top ghosts out. That's fine. Go back to extrude. I need that circle and I need that lobe. I want the extrusion to go both directions for the first part. So profile plane, yes. Direction, symmetric, going both sides. If it's both sides, you can make it go like 1 millimeter that way, 5 the other way. But symmetric obviously makes it symmetric. And then do I want this by half or the whole length? All right, whole length. That means if I select 2 millimeters, the whole thing is 2 millimeters wide. That's all. Distance, yeah, sure. All right, 6. Boop. It extrudes both directions. And because I currently have the bottom project or the bottom component active, it automatically makes it part of the base. Now, granted, if I'm going to make this a little bit wider, do that. And of course, the final part is leave it the operation at the bottom of the toolbox as join. It joins. Now, when I unhide or when I reactivate the whole project, it has made that little hinge lobe automatically part of the bottom. Repeat the same thing for the top. Activate the lid. If it hid that sketch, unhide that sketch. Sometimes it's awkward to actually select the original sketch. If you need to, temporarily hide the bottom. You could just barely make out that sketch of the circle and lobe. Let's go to extrude. Select the circle, select the lobe. Now this time we're going to use the instead of the start plane, we're going to use from object again. But I'm going to use that first lobe as my object. So make sure to unhide the bottom and just select that lobe there. So now when I make it like, I don't know, 2 millimeters wide, it automatically starts at one side of that hinge and it makes it part of the lid because I have the lid component active. Let's make that a little bit thicker just for reasons. 3, 4, sure, that works. Now, the problem is you can only make one side at a time, but that's not really a big deal. Hit OK. All right. Repeat. Extrude. Sketch object. I can make let's see, what did I do? 4. Yep. Now, real quick, 4 goes that direction. So if it goes the wrong way, just add a negative to it. It'll go the other way. But again, I need to make sure that it's not at the profile plane. Object, and select that lobe of the other one, in this case, the bottom. And there we go. It moves it out there, starts it out there. Hit OK. It's already at join. Bam. Very easy to work that way. Hit OK, reactivate the whole project. There we go. Very, very simple way to make a hinge. Let's save. Hinge modeled. Cool. Let's make the thing move. This part, the button that's just to the right of new component, or if it's not already there, assembly, is joint tool. There's a couple of different ones, so we're just going to stick with the standard, just joint. If you want, press J. That's a hotkey. Cool. So how you select these? Same thing. First thing you select is what will move. Second thing you select is what it'll move against, what it's referencing. So I want the lid to move. So I'm going to select, my selection is going to be based on the lid, and then the second selection is going to be the base. Now this is going to get a little bit awkward, but it's not that difficult to deal with. So the selection tools have gotten significantly better, but basically what I want to do is my hinge is made up of those 3 lobes. You got the ones going up and the one going down with that shared tube inside. And while it's not necessary, it does make things easier if you basically pick right inside of both. Technically, I could also select between these 2 faces, which does sometimes make it easier. So I'll show you both of them. The easy thing is as you mouse over, you can see very quickly how things get altered. As I'm mousing over the face, you see it highlights. As I mouse over the hole, it kind of starts flip-flopping back and forth. But as I move down that tube, it'll start selecting some things, but it gets a little awkward to do. So an easy way to work this is if I want to select smack in the middle where there's technically nothing, you have your selection choices simple and then between two faces, which all that means is literally I'm picking the faces here and it automatically assumes it's somewhere in the middle there. So I'm going to select that, my two faces, this face, orbit over, and that face. And then you just kind of select where you want it. And you see now that little symbol pops up right in the middle, really easy to get at. Okay. Second object, do the same. And I can actually select the exact same spot. Bam. That's it. Or what happened? Yes. Oh, it didn't select the thing. Oh, whoops. No, that should have worked. Why is that now ghosting out? Yeah, that's what I want. Did things change? Okay, cool. So it completely reversed everything that I needed it to do. All right, that's new. Let me cancel that and repeat it. Sorry, sometimes the selection thing gets a little weird. So, tell you what, let's do the simpler way of doing it. If that got awkward and didn't quite work right, no problem. What I want to do is then select the kind of space in between because they do have to be shared. They do have to share a plane, a spot. Basically, they rotate around each other. Not really a big deal then. If you have trouble selecting in there because the two objects are there, hide one. I hide the bottom, and I'm going to make it select right there at the top, that face inside, but floating in the center. What you can do is mouse over the plane you want to select on, press and hold control, and it locks your selection to only that plane. Now I can select right there, because before, see how it kind of keeps flip-flopping and such? Press and hold control, only right there in the face. What's supposed to happen is the object you just selected based on, or a component based on rather, ghosts out. Now I need the other one. Orbit around that exact same spot. Press and hold control if I need to. Select there. There we go. Don't know why it was doing that before. So you have some different options. The motion, we're going to go with Revolute. First one is rigid. It's like you're gluing two things together, but you can test it by pressing the animate button, preview motion. First one is rigid and just gives you anxiety. It just jiggles like that because that too, or it contains it, whichever. The other ones, there's plenty of other ones, but we're going to stick with Revolute. You can see why.
Whoa.
And that's pretty much it. We're going to, kind of, sort of. Well, no, because physics. But we're going to be able to move that around. So basically, we can set some constraints and such so it doesn't all go all the way through, but that's pretty much it. Hit OK, it moves. Now there's one more step for making it move and not completely losing where you are. Because while this will move, it will also just drag everything around because these two parts are technically linked together by that joint. Control Z, go back. What you have to do is called round one of the objects, one of the components, and the bottom makes sense. Mouse over that component, right click. The second thing that comes up is called pin. Why is it pin? Oh, okay. Anyway, that's a new one. Pin. They added some options there. It didn't used to say pin or ground because pinning was grounding it to the object. So that's weird. So anyway, you select pin, this little push pin symbol pops up. There you go. All right. Now I can click and drag the lid up and around. Now, granted, it's going to kind of move around a bit more than I want. How to change that? Go to joints, right click, and configure. And that's no, not configure. Geez, sorry. Nope. I'm getting confused on things. It's the motion. So I did not right click. I apologize. It's not right click. It's the arrow key right there. There we go. You can set minimum, maximum, all that kind of thing, blah, 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 if you want. Or you can just use the arrow keys, which makes it a little bit easier because it's a direct showing however much you want it to open to. No problem. click and drag it into place, and then you can press the preview button. You can see how far it'll move. There you go. That's pretty much it. What you can do to make a pin is just model a cylinder in that. And that's basically, if you want quick sketch or whatever, but real fast on that is create a sketch, and I can base it right there on that face because I can draw on faces with this. And let's just draw a quick cylinder. Make a couple of circles. I don't know. Makes it a little bit larger. Let's make one that fits in there. Now, if you're going to print this, don't make it the same size. Just make it slightly smaller. It's 3 millimeters, so make it like, I don't know, 2.8 or 2.9, something like that. That'll work. And that's just 2 circles.
Fred, like, what the
It's okay.
width of the plastic that it's using to build the.
Yeah.
the
You can be pretty exacting, but when you because what happens is when you print something, it kind of squishes out just a teeny bit, and it makes it easier to do it this way. If you just undersize it just a tiny bit. And all I'm going to do there, I mean, technically you could make this with a cylinder tool, but I'm just going to extrude like a couple of quick things there. And that's just extruding that circle and then that one, and just make it, I don't know, big enough to where technically you could like glue that in place. And there you go. That's it. Then you can glue it to one side. So that's just a pin. That's all. So there you go. Granted, there's a few extra steps, but it's all very much just using the same tools we're using. I imported a little frog friend, and then we'd add like some kind of feature, stuff like that. So model a quick box, make the joint lobes, the little simple lobes or the hinge lobes, add a joint, add a pin. We'll add other features from there. Pin. Okay. So there's a lot of extra steps, but at the same time, just step by step, it's all the exact same tools we've been using, except for things like the joint tool and using like the project tool, which we've kind of played with a little bit before. But that's pretty much it. Make sure that you right click and pin the base to the plane. What that does is it just locks that thing in virtual space so it can't move anymore. So now only the lid opens and closes for you. And that's it. So good luck with it, and we'll help, and I'll go around to help.